For thousands of years, the Galactic Union believed it was unstoppable. More than 400 intelligent species lived under its protection. Thousands of worlds traded peacefully. Massive fleets guarded every major star lane. The Union had defeated pirates, warlords, and countless hostile civilizations. Nothing seemed capable of threatening the galaxy. Until the swarm arrived. Nobody knew where they came from. Nobody knew how old they were. The first reports emerged from the outer colonies. Mining stations stopped transmitting. Research worlds vanished overnight. Entire systems went silent. At first, Union leaders dismissed the incidents as communication failures. Then the refugee ships started arriving. The survivors described endless black vessels. Living ships. Ships that consumed metal. Ships that consumed planets. Ships that consumed entire civilizations. Every report sounded impossible. Yet every report told the same story. The swarm did not negotiate. It did not conquer. It devoured. Within 6 months, 27 star systems disappeared. Within a year, over 100 worlds had fallen. The Union responded with overwhelming force. 3 grand fleets were assembled. Over 70,000 warships. The largest military operation in recorded history. The battle took place near the Orlon Expanse. Billions watched live broadcasts. The galaxy expected victory. Instead, they witnessed disaster. The swarm attacked without fear, without hesitation, without strategy that anyone could understand. Wave after wave crashed against the Union fleets. At first, Union weapons performed well. Thousands of swarm vessels exploded. Commanders celebrated. Then sensors detected something horrifying. The destroyed ships were being recycled. The swarm collected their own wreckage. Every destroyed vessel became raw material. Every battle made them stronger. The war turned into a nightmare. Within 12 hours, the grand fleets ceased to exist. 70,000 warships. Gone. The Union had never suffered a defeat on that scale. Panic spread across the galaxy. Worlds began evacuating. Governments collapsed. Trade routes disappeared. Entire economies shattered. For the first time in recorded history, extinction became a real possibility. Emergency meetings were held constantly. Scientists searched for weaknesses. Military leaders proposed desperate plans. Nothing worked. Every prediction ended the same way. The galaxy would fall. It was only a matter of time. Then someone mentioned a forgotten species. Humans. The chamber immediately erupted. Many delegates laughed. Others looked confused. A few seemed uncomfortable. Humanity had always been strange. They were respected, sometimes feared, but mostly ignored. For nearly 2 centuries, humans had remained isolated near the edge of known space. They traded occasionally, participated in diplomacy rarely, and avoided major galactic politics whenever possible. Many younger species had never even met a human. What could they possibly do? One delegate asked. They possess only a few hundred systems. They haven't fought a major war in generations. They are merchants and engineers now. Most representatives agreed. Humanity seemed irrelevant, until an elderly historian stood. His species had existed longer than the Union itself. His voice trembled as he spoke. You do not understand. The chamber fell silent. The historian activated an ancient hologram. A battlefield appeared above the delegates. Burning stars. Destroyed fleets. Entire armadas scattered across space. The image was over 600 years old. What you're seeing, the historian said, is the Terran expansion war. Several delegates exchanged confused looks. The name meant nothing to them. The historian continued. During that conflict, humanity fought 12 civilizations simultaneously. Silence filled the chamber. Nobody believed him. 12 civilizations? At once? Impossible. The hologram shifted again. Now it displayed numbers. Fleet sizes. Casualties. Industrial output. Every statistic seemed absurd. Every statistic was verified. The historian looked around the chamber. Humanity did not survive that war. A few delegates nodded. That made sense. Then the historian finished. They won. The room froze. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Because for the first time since the swarm appeared, a tiny spark of hope entered the room. And 3 days later, the Galactic Union sent a message to Earth. A message no one ever thought they would send. A plea for help. The message crossed the stars at maximum priority. Every relay station in the Galactic Union transmitted it. Every communication network cleared its channels. For the first time in history, the entire galaxy focused on a single destination. The birthplace of humanity. The request was simple. 3 words. We need help. No demands. No negotiations. No conditions. Just desperation. The Union expected a response within days. Weeks passed. Nothing came back. The silence only increased the panic. Meanwhile, the swarm continued advancing. Entire sectors vanished from galactic maps. The Union's remaining fleets fought battle after battle. Every engagement ended the same way. Defeat. The enemy simply could not be stopped. Worlds that had existed for thousands of years burned. Ancient civilizations abandoned their home systems. Refugee convoys stretched across light years of space. The galaxy was losing, and everyone knew it. Then, 23 days after the message was sent, something happened. A signal arrived from human space. It contained only one sentence. The translation spread across every government network within minutes. Message received. We are mobilizing. Confusion followed immediately. Mobilizing what? The Union's intelligence records showed only moderate human military forces. Enough to defend their territory. Not enough to stop an extinction-level threat. Some leaders interpreted the message as political courtesy. Others believed humanity intended to send humanitarian aid. Medical ships. Supply convoys. Evacuation fleets. Nobody expected much more. Then Union sensors detected movement. At first, the report seemed impossible. Hundreds of human shipyards had become active simultaneously. Construction platforms that had been dormant for decades suddenly awakened. Massive industrial zones lit up across human space. Entire moons transformed into manufacturing centers. The numbers were staggering. Thousands of vessels launched every week. Then thousands every day. Analysts assumed the data was corrupted. They checked again. The numbers increased. A nervous intelligence officer finally presented the findings to the Galactic Council. The chamber became silent. Current estimate, he said. Humanity is producing approximately 800 warships every 24 hours. Shock spread through the room. That production rate exceeded entire sectors of the Union. One delegate immediately objected. Impossible. Another nodded. No civilization possesses that capability. The officer swallowed nervously. Humans do. New images appeared on the chamber screens. Gigantic orbital shipyards. Endless assembly lines. Automated factories stretching across entire planets. Millions of drones working continuously. No pauses. No interruptions. No delays. The Union suddenly realized something terrifying. Humanity had not abandoned military industry. They had hidden it. For 2 centuries. While other species enjoyed peace, humans had quietly expanded their infrastructure. Built reserves. Stored resources. Created shipyards. Prepared. Prepared for what? Nobody knew. Then another report arrived. This one caused even greater concern. Human reserve fleets were activating. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Thousands. Ancient warships emerged from hidden docks. Massive carriers left underground hangars buried inside moons. Titanic dreadnoughts powered up after decades of silence. Military observers stared at the images in disbelief. Some vessels were larger than cities. Others carried enough weapons to destroy planets. Yet humanity had never shown them to anyone. The Union suddenly understood why ancient historians spoke carefully whenever humans were mentioned. Humanity had not forgotten war. Humanity had mastered it. 3 weeks later, a diplomatic delegation finally reached Earth. The representatives expected military briefings, strategic meetings, detailed negotiations. Instead, they were escorted to a large conference room overlooking Earth's oceans. There, they met a single human, an elderly woman wearing a dark naval uniform, silver hair, calm eyes, no decorations beyond a simple insignia. She introduced herself, Admiral Catherine Hayes. The delegates immediately asked the question that haunted the galaxy. Can you stop the swarm? The room became silent. The Admiral studied them for several moments. Then she smiled. Not arrogantly, not confidently, almost sympathetically, as if she already knew something they did not. Finally, she answered, yes. The delegates stared at her. Surely nobody could be that certain. Not against an enemy destroying the galaxy. One representative leaned forward. How many ships are you sending? The Admiral pressed a control panel. A holographic display appeared above the table. The delegates looked up, then froze, because the number displayed was unlike anything they had ever seen before. 10,000. 10,000 human warships. Not the entire fleet. Just the first wave. And at that moment, the galaxy realized something unbelievable. They had asked humanity for help. But humanity wasn't preparing a rescue mission. Humanity was preparing for war. The announcement spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. 10,000 ships. At first, nobody believed it. The number seemed absurd. Even the largest military coalitions in Galactic Union history had struggled to assemble fleets of that size. Yet humanity claimed this was only their first wave. Not their entire navy. Not their full strength. Just the beginning. Across hundreds of worlds, citizens watched the news in stunned silence. Some felt hope for the first time in years. Others feared the humans were overestimating themselves. After all, countless fleets had already challenged the swarm. All had failed. What made humanity different? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. 3 weeks later, long-range sensors near the Union capital detected massive hyperspace disturbances. At first, operators thought the instruments were malfunctioning. The readings were too large, too powerful, too numerous. Then visual confirmation arrived. The stars themselves seemed to bend. Space rippled across millions of kilometers. And suddenly, they appeared. Thousands upon thousands of human warships emerged from hyperspace. The sight was breathtaking. Entire sectors of space filled with metal giants. Dreadnoughts larger than mountains. Carriers stretching dozens of kilometers. Missile platforms surrounded by defensive escorts. Support vessels. Supply ships. Repair ships. Electronic warfare cruisers. The fleet seemed endless. Every observation deck around the capital world filled instantly. Billions watched in awe. Even experienced military commanders struggled to speak. The formation alone demonstrated a level of organization rarely seen in galactic history. 10,000 ships moved as one. Perfectly synchronized. Perfectly disciplined. Perfectly silent. Then the flagship arrived. A vessel so massive that nearby stations looked tiny beside it. Its armored hull reflected distant starlight. Hundreds of weapon batteries lined its surface. The name painted across its side appeared on every sensor display. TSV Resolute. The command ship of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, representatives gathered once more. This time, Admiral Catherine Hayes appeared through holographic transmission. She stood before a massive tactical map. Behind her, dozens of officers worked continuously. The room fell silent. Status report, Hayes said. A human officer stepped forward. Swarm advance continues. 37 inhabited systems expected to fall within 60 days. The Admiral nodded. Projected enemy strength? The officer answered immediately. Approximately 1.8 million vessels. Several delegates nearly collapsed. Even hearing the number was terrifying. 1.8 million ships. No wonder the galaxy had been losing. Yet Admiral Hayes showed no visible concern. Instead, she turned toward the delegates. We will begin offensive operations immediately. A representative interrupted. Offensive? Hayes looked confused. Of course. The delegate blinked. Most strategists recommend defensive containment. The admiral shook her head. That strategy has already failed. Another representative spoke nervously. Then what is your strategy? The human admiral zoomed the map outward. Red markers representing the swarm covered entire regions of the galaxy. Then she highlighted a point deep inside enemy territory. The delegate stared. That location was nearly impossible to reach. It sat behind countless enemy fleets. That is the swarm's primary command nexus, Hayes explained. Military experts immediately objected. No fleet could penetrate that far. The losses would be catastrophic. It cannot be done. Hayes listened patiently. Then she delivered a response that stunned the room. We're not going around them. Silence. We're going through them. The chamber erupted. Generals argued. Scientists protested. Politicians shouted. Everyone insisted the plan was suicidal. Eventually the noise faded. Hayes waited calmly. Then she asked a single question. How many wars against the swarm have you won? Nobody answered. The admiral nodded. Exactly. The transmission ended shortly afterward. Within hours, the human expeditionary fleet departed. 10,000 ships accelerated toward the front lines. News networks followed every movement. Entire civilizations watched the operation live. No one knew whether they were witnessing salvation or the final disaster before extinction. 5 days later, the fleet reached the war zone. The first enemy formations appeared. Sensor operators immediately began counting. 50,000 swarm vessels. Then 70,000. Then over 100,000. The largest swarm fleet ever recorded. Human commanders received the numbers. Not one ship changed course. Not one vessel slowed down. The fleet continued straight ahead. Toward impossible odds. Toward certain destruction. Or so everyone believed. Then Admiral Hayes issued the first combat order. And with that command, the greatest battle in galactic history began. The destruction of the Swarm Command Nexus should have ended the war. But it didn't. At least, not immediately. Across the galaxy, billions watched as countless swarm fleets suddenly lost coordination. Entire formations drifted aimlessly. Some attacked each other. Others simply stopped moving. Yet many continued fighting through instinct alone. The enemy was wounded, not dead. Admiral Catherine Hayes knew the danger. The remaining swarm forces still numbered in the hundreds of thousands. If they regrouped under a secondary intelligence network, the war could continue for decades. Humanity had one chance to finish it. One chance to ensure the galaxy would never face the swarm again. A massive war council was assembled aboard the TSV Resolute. Representatives from dozens of species joined the meeting. For the first time since the invasion began, the galaxy was no longer discussing survival. They were discussing victory. Hayes stood before a holographic map. Red enemy markers flickered across hundreds of systems. Far fewer than before, but still dangerous. Locate every surviving swarm cluster, she ordered. Human and alien officers worked together. Within hours, a complete picture emerged. Without centralized control, the swarm had fractured into isolated groups. Each group was acting independently. The enemy's greatest strength, its unity, had become its greatest weakness. Hayes immediately launched Operation Dawn, the largest coordinated offensive in galactic history. Human fleets split into hundreds of task forces. Union fleets followed behind them. Worlds that had once fought alone now fought together. For the first time, the galaxy acted as a single civilization. And the results were devastating. One swarm fleet after another disappeared. Entire enemy sectors collapsed. Supply organisms were destroyed. Breeding worlds were sterilized. Industrial hives were vaporized from orbit. Every day, the red zones on the map grew smaller. Every day, hope grew stronger. Months passed. Then one morning, a transmission arrived from the outer rim. A human reconnaissance vessel had discovered something extraordinary. The swarm's origin world. The place where the invasion had begun. the place responsible for the deaths of trillions. A fleet was assembled immediately. Not because it was necessary, because it had to be done. Human and Union warships traveled together. Thousands of vessels entered the ancient system. What they found shocked everyone. The planet was dying. Without the nexus, the swarm ecosystem was collapsing. Gigantic structures covered the surface. Organic factories. Living cities. Ancient scars of a civilization built entirely for consumption and war. For centuries, perhaps millennia, it had devoured everything in its path. Now it was helpless. The fleet entered orbit. Silence filled every command deck. This was the enemy that had nearly ended the galaxy. The monster behind every destroyed world. Every refugee. Every death. The order came from Admiral Hayes herself. End it. A single beam fired from the TSV Resolute. Then another. Then thousands more. The surface erupted in light. Entire continents vanished beneath oceans of plasma. The atmosphere ignited. The crust shattered. Minutes later, the swarm homeworld ceased to exist. The war was over. Official confirmation arrived 3 weeks later. No active swarm forces remained. No command signals were detected. No surviving hives could be found. For the first time in years, the galaxy was safe. Celebrations erupted everywhere. Worlds lit their skies with fireworks. Refugees returned home. Trade routes reopened. Civilizations began rebuilding. And everywhere people spoke the same word. Humanity. The species that had answered the call. The species that arrived with 10,000 ships. The species that had faced impossible odds and won. Months later, the Galactic Union held a special ceremony on its capital world. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered. The largest audience in recorded history watched live. At the center of the chamber stood Admiral Catherine Hayes. Older, tired, but smiling. The Union president stepped forward. Humanity saved us all. Thunderous applause filled the chamber. It continued for several minutes. When silence finally returned, Hayes approached the podium. Everyone expected a speech about courage, or victory, or sacrifice. Instead, she said something nobody expected. We didn't save the galaxy. The audience looked confused. Hayes glanced around the chamber. At allies. At survivors. At former rivals standing together. Then she smiled. You saved yourselves the moment you chose to stand together. The chamber became silent. Because deep down, everyone knew she was right. The swarm had nearly destroyed countless civilizations. But it had also united them. Created friendships where hatred once existed. Created cooperation where division once ruled. Humanity had won the war. But the galaxy had won something greater. A future. And as thousands of ships departed for home beneath peaceful stars, a final message was transmitted across every known world. When darkness came, the galaxy asked for help. Humanity answered.